Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order. And do we have attendance?
Yes, we do.
Excellent. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Great. Okay, moving on. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Excellent. All in favor, say yes.
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 Yes. Okay. Do we have any citizens' comments?
I have not received any.
Okay. Then we will move on to Eli to present the financial reports.
Okay, so financial report begins on page 17 after the check register. Just a couple of highlights from here. So our cash on hand did increase $6.3 million in the month of September because some of our major payments from taxing authorities came in. So cash on hand has increased from $11 million to $17.3 million as of the end of September. So that brings us to 95.8% of our annual budgeted tax receipts, which is pretty good for this time of year, which means we are likely to come in maybe 100 and 102% by the time we get to the end of the year, which is expected because we try to anticipate that very conservatively, because you never know exactly how much is going to come in over the course of the year. So that's to be expected. Our fund balance was extremely steady in that the decreased from $5.9 million to $5.9 million, down $8,000, which basically means we spent in that month just about the same amount as the accrued revenue. So you can see that then that the line is flat across there. Moving on to page 18. So our revenue so far, that is the accrued revenue, $4.6 million, which is most of what we would expect to have accrued at this time of the year. And then if you skip to expenditures, our year-to-date expenditures are $4.4 million, of which about $500,000 has not yet been paid, meaning that is prepaid or accrued or paid in advance as we go, subscriptions, things like that. So our total actual cash expended is $3.9 million. So that means year-to-date, our revenues have exceeded expenses by about $300,000. So our current revenue is 24% of the approved budget, which is just about right because we are 25% of the way through the calendar year, or through the fiscal year, rather. And as we said before, the actual cash receipts, 95%. I just wanted to make a mention, the Friends Donation Fund has a balance of $10,681. That's where it's been. I did have a meeting with them last week where they're getting ready to start making contributions to the library again, which has not happened since before 2020. And so they're working through their processes. They're in a pretty good shape financially and getting ready to start making some donations to the library for library operations. And we'll have more information about that as we get closer. But I did communicate to them that the ideal situation is if they tell us in January how much they're going to give us in July, so we can include it in our budget revenue projections, budget for the expense as well as budget for the revenue. So they'll be planning that annually. You know, they assumed we wanted some money every month, and I said it really doesn't matter to get it every month. It's much better for us to have a good sense of how much we're going to receive when we start our budget process. Just looking quickly on page 19, I mentioned last month we were having an issue with accounts payable reporting. That has been resolved. So now that the accounts payable number is correct there on that line for liabilities. And then on page 20, again, you can see we're 25% of the way through the year. So just looking at some of the things that are sort of outliers. Grants and memorials, we've received already $5,000, which is what our budget was for the entire year. So we've just gotten more donations than we were expecting. So we're already at 110% of that revenue. It's a very small line item. Fines, fees, and others, you can see we're already at 80% of the annual expected revenue, and that we've already received $15,000 out of $20,000 to be expected. And non-resident fees is also running way ahead, which is something that we've been noticing with some of our stats, is that we have a lot of active cardholders right now, a lot more than we normally do. I think some of that is attributable to people who signed up for the first time during the pandemic. But for years and years, we always floated right around 45,000 active cardholders. Now, that doesn't mean that's the number of borrowers, because in many cases, people use one card for their entire household, right? That's a very common thing to do. However, we now have 75,000 active cardholders. So it's up substantially over any number that I've seen in my years here. So that's great to see. Lots of people using the library. We'll see if that's some sort of a bolus related to the pandemic, or if it's a new normal. We'll see as time goes by. So then looking down at the expenses, anything that is over 25% in that last column means it's running ahead of where we would expect for the year. You can see it benefits is a little over. There are some beginning of year startup costs that I would expect to see there, but it's something that we will have our eye on. That's a very hard thing to estimate precisely. So we'll look at that as we go through the year. Accounting and audit, that's to be expected because we've paid most of our audit fees that come up at the beginning of the year. Materials a little bit ahead, again, because of subscriptions, mostly subscription databases that get accrued at the beginning of the year. Copier expense running a little bit ahead. We had some new devices come under that contract, which is to be expected. And again, library programming running a little bit ahead because of summer programming, which is when a lot of that happens. So all of that is to be expected, the things that are running ahead. The one other thing is purchase services, which is already at 47%. Again, that's the sort of thing where most of those expenses happen early in the fiscal year. So that's to be expected. But overall, you can see 25% of the year, we've spent 22.9% of the budget, which is where we'd like to be. Just one more note is that next month at the regular board meeting, you'll be receiving the audit report from Yo and Yo. They will be meeting with the Finance Committee in mid-November, 2 weeks before the meeting, so the Finance Committee can review that and talk privately with the auditors and get their feedback. Also, this is the last year of our 3-year Yo and Yo contract. So after we're done with this audit process, we'll have a discussion among the Finance Committee about how to proceed. We can go for an RFP. We can extend the contract. There's multiple options available, and we'll discuss that in the Finance Committee. But we will have the audit report at the November board meeting. And that's the financial report. Any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Eli. Moving on to the library report.
All right. So if you guys can bring up the screen there. So here's our monthly report for October of 2022. So for our stat of the month, I wanted to look at checkouts a little bit. So what we did here is we pulled the number of system-wide, meaning across all locations, checkouts and renewals. Now, just to kind of set the stage on that, when the state and federal governments collect circulation statistics, they always want you to include renewals in there because most libraries only allow one renewal. So it's a common thing to get one checkout, one renewal, that sort of thing. Because we have unlimited renewals, many of our patrons renew all their things every day. So we've got a lot of numbers in there, but these are the numbers we're required to report, so we tend to look at it that way. So you can see 2018, the blue section is print checkouts. The green section is AV checkouts, meaning DVD, Blu-ray, CD, and books on cassette. Books on CD. I'm dating myself. We do not have any books on cassette anymore. And then that little gray slice is overdrive ebooks. So it's partially just to show that when people talk about phase transition, that the ebooks are replacing demand, it's not happening. It's a sliver of usage. It's about on the scale of books on CD. And it's funny because when audiobooks came out, people said all the same things that they said about ebooks, and that, audio, no one's going to read anymore because now they can just listen. Well, audiobooks have a particular usage, they have a particular audience, they have a particular use case, and they grew to fill that and then stopped growing. And that's really what we're seeing with ebooks. Even if you look at the size of that gray slice in September of each month, even through the pandemic, it was not a significant inflection point and not a big part of our checkouts. But it's there in the mix. So you can see this is just the month of September, so we're really doing apples to apples. September's not always a hugely busy month for us because people are very busy with other things. But you can see 2019 was considerable increases over 2018. Although in 2018, if I recall correctly, I think we had a building closed during September of 2018, if I remember right. So that is partially, that may be a little lower than it would normally have been. But then in September 2020, when we were doing vestibule service, you can see lower than 2019, lower than 2018, and then September 2021, a little bit higher than 2020, and September 2022, a little bit lower than 2021. Partially, there's a lot of other things to do now that you couldn't do a year ago. But overall, I point this out, and then in context of our number of active users growing, these are the sorts of things that it's often for libraries to get really worried about. But to me, we really don't have a lot of control over these numbers. These are mostly about greater societal issues. The weather is a big impact on this sorts of things. And these aren't, really what it's showing is that the past 3 years have been very steady in terms of circulation, and that we don't have many concerns about that. And it's, a business could get really upset about a 3% decrease, but for us, it's just noise in the data, really. So just to kind of put that in perspective, that's where we're at the moment, just comparing September checkouts for the past 5 years. Yes, Molly?
I have a question about the ebook numbers, which is that they're capped. You can only check out 10 at a time.
That's correct.
And we don't cap checkouts for physical materials.
That's correct.
I'm curious about, so to me, that, the bigger one on 2021 is bigger, especially considering the fact that you can only have a max of 10 at a time and
Yeah.
only 15 holds. I'm just curious about, where that...
It's relatively few patrons run into those limits. So they're not, I don't know that it's a big impact on the extent of it. I think it's much more just about the number of our patrons that are interested in ebooks at all.
Yeah.
Which, many of our most dedicated patrons are also ebook readers. But, that's not something that we actually have control over because it's through the consortium and we don't get to set those restrictions.
Right. Yeah, I guess I was just wondering if the changes, because there's caps, if the changes would indicate more users or there's some other thing in there.
It's a little tricky to get that data out of the platform because, that it's not our infrastructure. I would guess that we definitely had the most people in 2020 and 2021 trying ebooks, but I think a lot of them could have had a bad experience because you don't really expect to have to wait your turn to use an ebook. And when you go, oh, this is great, I don't even have to go to the library. Oh, but I have to wait 4 months for my turn to download the book. Many people don't make it past that interaction, right? And this does not include our direct license ebooks that don't have any limits, because those are really counted as downloads. And even putting all those together, it's not even on the scale of the Overdrive ebooks.
Yeah.
Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions about this? All right. So here's a website update. We have all of the reports that the board has ever received are they're in the agenda, they're with the video, but if you're just trying to look at just those reports, it's not actually very easy to find them. So one of the members of the archives team, Karen, pulled together all of the reports that the board has received for the past 10 years. And one of the members of the archives team made this web page, which is a really quick and easy way to see all of the reports that the library board has received over the past 10 years. So that includes approved budgets, it includes audit reports, it includes any other report that was submitted to the board at open session, labor contracts, the survey reports, the feasibility study, all that stuff. So you can see that at About Us/reports. It's also on the board page. So if you go to About Us and you click on Library Board, you'll see a link to this there. And we'll be making some more kind of updates to the way that the board information is organized, just to kind of have it a little less duplication and make a little bit more, be a little bit better organized. It hasn't had a librarian look at it in a long time. So the librarians are on the case and they have ideas. Any questions about that?
That's just great. I'm glad.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Just a quick Plaza update. So we're in the process of talking with Scioto Township's building department. We don't have a timeline yet, but one of the pieces of feedback we received is that based on the square footage, they were thinking that the space would need more parking. We're looking not to add any new pavement to the space, and they don't want that either. So this right here shows just a restriping plan that gets us a lot closer. So we just, with paint, addressing the number of spots there are. But you can see, let's see, is my cursor up there on the screen? Sort of. These 6 spots would be a new little place there if we decide that those are necessary. So that's an easy place for us to add a very small amount of non-permeable surface and if needed. But we're in the process of having those discussions. We don't really have an update at this point. Once we have a building permit, we'll have a much better idea of how that all process is going to go. And Len's got a number of bids to award tonight. I think 5, is that right? 5 tonight? Yeah. Okay, this is a report from our event that we had last Friday. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
I have a question about that.
Yes.
It makes me think a little bit about Pittsfield and how, when Pittsfield would have events, all of a sudden it was like, where are all those people going to go? Because it's kind of on a busy roads. So is Scioto Township okay with people parking on Parkland Plaza?
We haven't talked about that specifically. Our plan for the few events that we would have annually,
right.
you know, it's like maybe 2 or 3, is we're going to make good friends with all of the neighbors because almost all of our events will be on the weekends and there's nothing going on the weekends.
True.
Particularly with the U of M urgent care facility that isn't currently open on the weekends. We're going to see if we can get direct permission from the neighbors to use their parking lots so that nobody has to park on the street. Our goal is for nobody to be calling the township to complain
Great.
about the parking when we have an event.
As long as you're thinking about that.
Yeah, so it's definitely something that's on our radar and we'll be in discussion with our neighbors to make sure everybody's comfortable with the uses that'll be happening on the weekends.
Cool.
Does that answer your question, Jamie? Okay, thank you very much. Sorry to miss that. Okay, so on Friday night, we had Congressman Jamie Raskin here in the building in conversation with our own Debbie Dingle. Debbie did mention that she has since moved to Ann Arbor, which she had lived in Dearborn for many years, and now she lives here in Ann Arbor. I took that opportunity to present her with a library card got that set up. So she is now a card-carrying member of the Ann Arbor District Library. So this was a terrific event. Very excellent presentation sort of in discussion from Congressman Raskin. He gave a lot of updates. You know, they had a big news week, and so there was a lot to talk about. But he also talked about some of the personal things that are in his book. And one thing that he said that I think I heard multiple people in the room repeating was that when everything looks hopeless, you're the hope. And that was a very, I think a lot of us in the room were struck by that. So it was very well attended, about 130 people, including a number watching online. And that is something that you can watch on YouTube anytime that you'd like. That is on our YouTube page. And of course, because it's on YouTube, there will be YouTube comments from people. And we are having a pretty light touch on that as we normally do. But we will delete comments that are directly misinformation, disinformation, or personal attacks. So that's how we're handling that. So you can watch all that if you'd like to see it. Coming up in November is we will be observing Native American Heritage Month, featuring quotes, poetry, staff recommendations, and videos on Native American local history and art. We're also featuring the exhibit No, Not Even for a Picture, which is materials from the Richard Port Jr. collection of Native American photography, which is at the Clements Library. So that will be on display here at the library from November 2nd to January 1st. And we'll have a related online discussion with the exhibit curators on November 12th at 1 p.m. So that's coming up in November. Also upcoming events, October 30th will be our Halloween costume contest. That's also during the time of the downtown trick-or-treating treat parade, which will be on the 30th. So then on Halloween itself, we'll have our 2 showings of the preschool puppet show at 10:30 and 11:30 on Halloween. My costume has arrived, and I'm so excited to wear it. I've wanted it for a long time, and so it will be making its debut this weekend. Then on November 6th, in partnership with the Jewish Community Center's book festival, we'll have 2 authors, one live and one on Zoom, the author of Shoam's Bangle and Tia Fortuna's New Home. Shoam's Bangle is about a young girl who was leaving Iran, and there was a bracelet hidden in a pastry so that she would be able to take it with her when she moved to Israel. And then Tia Fortuna's New Home is actually about Cuban Jews. And so there's some really interesting parts in both those stories, and both the authors will be with us on November 6th. I will be emceeing that event after I told them that my sock puppet had a prior engagement, because that's who they wanted first, was my sock puppet to host the event. I said, I'm sorry, you'll have to settle for me.
Didn't we have an event with the author of Tia Fortuna? I feel like maybe I'm wrong.
I think we've definitely had something with her before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it may have been several years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. And then on November 22nd will be the Nerd Night season finale with Annie Rawerda of Depths of Wikipedia. Some of you may have seen her interviewing Randall Monroe a couple weeks ago on campus. She's terrific, and that will be a really great season finale. That is actually going to happen here at the Downtown Library because it's gotten a little too cold to meet out back at York. So that will be happening there, and then Nerd Night will be on a little break for the winter, and then we will resume in the spring. Here's some new AADL releases. We have a new podcast just in time for Halloween, an all-new podcast where 4 AADL staffers, Christopher Becker, Matt Gauntlet, Allison Jones, and Amanda Schott, talk about horror movies that they've watched. Each episode is a new horror film that the hosts discuss at length. And we have a 4-episode first season where they cover The Fog, Alien, The Bad Seed, and A Tale of Two Sisters. And that is available wherever you get your podcasts. And this podcast, which just released like 2 weeks ago, has already garnered some fan art. So I'm not sure exactly what from the Alien episode this is in reference to, but they were very inspired and they decided to send us this fan art, some sort of Alien Animal Crossing mix-up. So, our archives update, we've just completed a project to digitize the Ann Arbor City directories going all the way back to 1868. Directories are more than just early phone books. They have information on people's careers, marital status, employers, even whether or not they own their homes. These 100 directories cover Ann Arbor, and many early volumes cover other Washtenaw County communities as well. There's no better place to start researching genealogy and local history, and you can find that out at aadl.org/directories. This is especially interesting if you have an older home to see who lived in your home previously, provided you know how to navigate all the street name and changes and the street number changes. Because I found out when I started looking at my house that our address used to be a completely different house on a different part of town. So there is a great article that I think Grace Shackman had written about the history of street name changes. So if you get into researching that, of course, you can always email our archives team and they will be happy to help you out with that. But this is a great collection we've been looking to digitize for a long time, and now it's all available at aadl.org/directories. We have a content launch coming up on Sunday, November 6th. This is the next phase of our partnership with the African American and Cultural Historical Museum of Washtenaw County. This is our phase 9 of the Living Oral History Project, featuring George Goodman, Leah and Mike Bass, Bill Henderson, and Jennifer Herschel Brown, and Patricia Manley. And those are our subjects, and we will be debuting that on Zoom November 6th at 3 p.m. Here's a great one, ADL in the community. Our second grade visits are back, finally. It's been something that we have not done in person since the pandemic. This is when we invite basically every second grader in the community to come to the library, get a library card, and get all signed up. Those have been super great fun. Those have just started again. And here's a photo shared of one of our second graders in the community, shared by proud parent Betsy Saltzman. So they're very excited to be getting their new library card. Here's our staff spotlight for the month. This is Allison Jones. She's a library technician and a storyteller. We frequently hear praise for her from people who have been watching her story times, particularly online during the pandemic. We heard from several people who continued watching Allison's story times after they moved away to other communities. So that's always a great sign of a strong connection with the audience. So what do you wish people you work with knew about you? And she says, I grew up with AADL, attending preschool story times with Laura Pershing Rayner, having fun at events and playing the summer game, and now I'm delighted to take part in it as an employee. And so that is Allison, and also one of the hosts of the What Scares Us podcast. Here's a mention of the month. This is a project we've been really excited about. I'm just going to read this here. This is from Aya, which is Inkalypse on Instagram. Test print from this set of Arabic type that I've been sorting for the past 2-ish months, specifically here looking at particular letter connections and how they function in movable type. This rare set of Arabic type is on loan from Jody Harnish in the secret lab at AADL Graham. I've been helping sort and count the type to determine the font scheme as part of a larger project, and for me, an ongoing inquiry into the place of Arabic in movable type. We're particularly interested when we can get non-English, non-Roman typefaces into the secret lab. It really opens up the inclusion of the facility to other spaces, and it's something that is increasingly rare and hard to find, and also something that we need a lot of external expertise for. So that's certainly something that's happening with this, and we've got a couple other languages that we're working on as well. Any questions about that?
It's cool.
Okay. Here's our compliment of the month. After reading about the shelf service thing in the AADL newsletter, I gave it a try and have to say how delighted I was with my first order. I asked for books about home cooking around the world and received an overflowing bag full of some great stuff. So my hat's off to whoever down there did the selecting for me and to the AADL for offering this service. I've been recommending it to all my friends and neighbors. And we have a fun tweak for shelf service coming in coming months. I think we'll be talking about that perhaps at the next meeting. And here's a complaint of the month. It is very unfortunate that my son will not be able to get this lantern. He was very excited all summer gaining the points required to make the purchase. I delayed returning to my job in another state as long as possible in the hopes that this late order would arrive. He loves lights and lanterns and is still dealing with the woes of the dark nights, but alas, I will just purchase him a nightlight and return to my job on Friday. This patron did receive their lantern. We had a supply chain issue with the lantern, and some of them were broken. And this was, she had missed the email saying that it was ready for pickup. So she did have it by the end of the week. But just to illustrate how intensely some of our summer game players feel about their prizes. And we are very happy to report that a surprise shipment of pandas has arrived. Or is we have the shipping information. It is supposed to arrive. We'll see if they are intercepted in transit. But we are expecting some pandas to arrive next week, and we should be able to finally fill the remaining summer game orders next week and be done with that for this year. So that is my report for this month. Any other questions?
Those pandas, man.
Yeah. Can't keep them in stock.
We got our second panda, so our household is happy again.
Excellent.
All right, thank you so much. Moving on to new business, which looks to be a whole lot of construction. Do you want to come up and talk about these as a group first? So,
However you'd like to do it.
what do you think, Eli?
Why don't we do them one at a time? 'Cause we
Okay,
gotta
let's do them
resolve
one at a time. So the first is about approving a construction bid for electrical work at Parkland Plaza.
Yep, so we had 3 responses for the electrical work. All good companies, we've worked with 2 of them. Our recommendation is to go with Dugan Electric, which was also the low bid on that category.
Sorry, lots of flipping here.
Yep.
So the 3 bids are on page 22, 23, and 24, and the resolution is on page 25.
Okay. So perhaps I'll go ahead and read the resolution and have someone move, and then we can discuss. All right, here we go. Resolution approving construction bid for electrical work at Parkland Plaza. The board resolves to, 1, authorize O'Neill Construction to award electrical work to Ann Arbor District Library in the amount of,
Actually, our recommendation is for Dugan.
Oh,
So,
sorry.
to award to Dugan Electrical in the amount of $305,170. That's the library's recommendation.
okay. That the expenditure be authorized from the capital fund. 3, that all resolutions and parts of resolutions that conflict with the provisions of this resolution are rescinded. Can I get a motion on this resolution?
Discussion.
I thought we move and then just, move, second,
Oh,
discuss.
okay.
Yep, sorry.
So moved.
Second.
All right, excellent, discussion.
So why do we recommend, was it Dugan?
Dugan. There's a correction. I have 306.90, 306.
Oh, I'm sorry, I looked at the wrong place. It is 306.90.
Okay.
306.90. I looked at, the item total is what on the bid we should be looking at. Thank you, Len.
Yep.
So-
Yeah, Dugan's worked with us quite a bit. They actually did the work in this room and with the video wall. One of our local contractors, if we call, they'll do low voltage for us. They're out really quick, so it's been a long relationship. I think we kind of made that connection through one different O'Neill project. So they've done quite a bit for us, and I like them a lot because they are so responsive. If we call about something, they'll do a small job for us, and then some of these bigger build-outs as well.
You can also see these 3 bids are very close. This is not a place where there's a lot of variation.
Can you just tell me what the EMR rate means? That's not something I'm familiar with. At the very bottom of the bid, each bid has a score. I just don't know what that means.
I am not sure.
Okay.
That must be an internal O'Neill thing.
Gotcha.
I will
Okay.
get an answer before the next board meeting.
Experience modifier rate. So it's basically a way that O'Neill puts a score on their experience with.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So they may want to award a slightly higher bid if they've had a good track record versus a bad track record or something like that. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. That's my only question.
Any other questions, discussion?
I mean, you can see that the EMR rate is highest for the one that you've picked, so that's helpful.
Okay. Oh, go ahead, Corinne.
Oh, no, I was just gonna move to amend for the $306,090.
Okay. Can I get a second?
with Dugan.
Seconded.
Excellent. Any discussion on the amendment? Okay. Is this a roll call vote?
No.
Okay, so everyone in favor of this resolution, say yes.
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 Okay, that passes.
Do we need to do the amendment and then the resolution?
Oh, shoot.
If the amendment is,
The amendment, now you need to vote on
Yes,
it.
now vote on the resolution.
Okay, all right. Can I get a motion to move on the amended resolution?
So moved.
Second?
Seconded.
Sec- Molly? Okay, great. And now we will vote on the amended resolution. All in favor, say yes.
yes.
Excellent, it passes. All right, moving on to resolution approving construction bid for HVAC installation at Parkland Plaza, page 26 through 28.
So Len, why don't you tell us first what your recommended vendor and amount is?
Okay, so
And
the
then we can read these.
the recommendation on this one is Robertson Morris, $986,700. On this one, we only had the 2 responses, and I can go a little deeper in that if you'd like.
Sorry, you're saying the one on page 27 is the one that you're recommending?
Yes.
I mean,
And you
it
can
is-
see there the subcontract total down at the bottom, 986.
Got it.
It is really interesting now knowing about that, what that means on these, because there's a significant difference in these.
Okay, hold on just a second. All right, how about I go ahead and read this resolution? Resolution approving construction bid for HVAC installation at Parkland Plaza. The board resolves to authorize O'Neill Construction to award HVAC installation to Robertson Morrison in the amount of $986,700. 2, that the expenditure be authorized from the capital fund. 3, that all resolutions and parts of resolutions that conflict with the provisions of this resolution are rescinded. Okay, can I get a motion on that?
So moved.
Seconded.
Jamie seconded, discussion.
I'd like to mention that this one came in above what the project budget was expecting. As we see how things go across the rest of the project, this might cause a expansion of the construction budget overall on the order of $100,000 to $200,000. Am I about right there? Len?
Yes, so when I totaled everything up, even probably with what we would recommend, we would be around $225,000 over budget. But we do have the contingency of, I think it's $150,000. I'm sorry, it's $165,000. So if everything stays on track, it will be around $100,000 over the original bid. This one was really tough because of the work. This is the only one we asked for, basically their cover letter and like job, someone that has actually done ground source geothermal. I think that's what changed the rating so much on this one, because John Darr had to partner with rigging companies, whereas Robertson Morrison actually has everything in-house. I think they do have to subcontract the drilling, but everything else they had in-house. And I think that changed the score quite a bit. It's a unique project. We tried to solicit other bidders. To get 2 was, not what we wanted, but that's where we ended up. But yeah, it's definitely about $200,000 over the original proposed construction budget when we started this project last spring.
For HVAC.
For HVAC, yes.
And part of that was over the cost, this is not the sole reason, but through the engineering process, we wound up needing a piece of equipment that was not on the radar at the beginning of that. And it's basically with our goal to not require natural gas backup heat for the new office space. We required a new piece of equipment, which is similar to an energy wheel, to be able to reclaim some of the heat from inside the building, because we didn't want to add any supplemental gas-powered heat to the office space. It's going to be well insulated. Geothermal's pretty good for that kind of thing, but in really cold months, you have to have a plan. So we needed a new piece of equipment that was a scope expansion and also will require some space in the warehouse that we hadn't previously been aware of. So that was, I wouldn't say a surprise, but something that was an expansion of the scope of the project as we were in the engineering phase.
Any other?
Yeah.
I mean, is it fair to say that this is unusual in a lot of ways? Like, we're doing something to sort of achieve a level of sustainability that it just isn't widely adopted yet, and that's probably part of the
No, I
contribution?
wouldn't say that. I think a
No.
lot of times, when Eli and I've talked about this, every time I've been involved with a project like this, we either didn't have the land for the wells or we didn't have the funding, because it is, in some cases double. But we looked at it, I think, traditional HVAC's around $45 a square foot. I think this came in at $65. It's not a lot more, so I don't think this isn't new technology.
Okay.
It's just you run into things that you won't have the space for the wells, or, you have to put a parking lot over them, and then honestly, people see the cost. So it's just, not every company does it. So it's hard to get experienced trades that actually do this work and do it well, because we don't want it, we don't want someone doing it for the first time,
Yeah.
right? So-
Particularly, O'Neill did not want to have two separate subs drilling the wells and installing the HVAC, because when something doesn't work, they can blame each other. So we wanted to be in a position where if they didn't have well drilling in-house, the well drilling was the HVAC sub. So that was part of why we only got 2 bids, because it's relatively uncommon for firms like this to have a well drilling in-house. So they either needed to partner with someone else, so that limited it to.
We could have added 2 categories. We could have, at HVAC, the well drilling and then the excavation, we probably would have had more responses. But it would have still been, we might have had 2 responses for the well drilling and 6 for mechanical, but like Eli mentioned, we really want this under one roof and them be responsible for everything. Because I'm sure there will be maintenance calls down the road.
Yeah.
I have a question about, just given the large electrical demand by a system like this, what happens if the grid is out, we lose power?
Well, it's all electric heat pumps, basically.
Yeah.
So the heat, we won't be circulating, you would lose heat. But we would in any other building as well, because even this building, there's a boiler, but it's still forced air, so it's
But as the generator backup, or?
not in this building.
Oh, okay.
At the branches, we do. The
Okay.
branches are full emergency backup.
And that's a project to come later.
Yeah.
After this is if we talked about the possibility of a large solar array out there, especially if we can get someone else to pay for it.
Yeah.
And the possibility of some sort of energy storage out there to put us in a better position for that to be a little more grid independent. But it is, now, the amount of power required to do geothermal is much lower than compressor driven cooling or something like that. But at the same time, it is a grid dependent
Yeah.
system.
This would be a good place to look at solar array, battery backups, things that we didn't do at the branches, some type of harnessing the power and then using it for off-grid times, then we would have it for outages, or even that in a small generator that's much smaller than what we used at the branches because the demand's so low. So that would be a project down the road.
Yep. Cool.
This is still within the conversation we had earlier, where with the utility savings, it's still around a 10 or 12-year payback.
Yeah, it's
But what if
exciting.
we went with traditional HVAC? The simple payback is still pretty low with this, even though it's a big number. This is the biggest part of the job for sure.
I do want to mention that there is still natural gas heat for the existing part of the building, the existing office space, and the backup heat for the warehouse that is existing. We did not replace that in this scope of the project. It's something that can be done later.
Scott?
So we're spending that more now because the operating expense, in part because the operating expense of running this geothermal system will be so much lower, which is why we see the short-term payback. So it's a big upfront capital expense, which is why a lot of people don't do it because they
Yes.
can't or they don't want to.
Yep.
Because you can amortize those payments out with a less efficient system, but this gets us there sooner. And because it's so much less energy intensive, we'll be.
And we have
seeing the
started some
sustainability
conversations
benefit.
with, about solar, because the building's perfect for it. But
Yep.
to look at, can we partner, can there be some type of grant or something with DT where we can get a break on it? This would be the perfect building with the low energy demand from the ground source geothermal.
Yep.
It wouldn't be a big system, whereas, if
Right.
you try to, we couldn't do it at the branches. This place, we're actually designing it where we could use solar and battery which we couldn't do when we asked for the generator project.
Is there space for more solar than we would need?
Possibly, I think that's kind of where,
Particularly if you do both sides of the roof.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a large, large roof.
Right.
So there's a lot of potential, and it's situated exactly the right direction.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of solar resource there for us to explore later.
So we're talking to like the SCU people, the sustainable energy utility, like conversations around, okay.
Yes, absolutely. There's the other, to the south of us, there's a huge green space that's not used. So if this can't be used as part of this ground source geothermal, that could be another place for more solar. It's facing the right direction. So there's a ton of potential there. That could be the next project out there for sure.
Our dream is ultimately to be able to power the delivery route with solar. But that requires not just solar array, but also storage, because the truck is out on the road during the time when the sun is shining. But there's a lot of different ways to approach that.
Okay, anything else? Shall we go ahead and vote? All right, all in favor, aye? Aye. All right, does the motion pass or the resolution passes? What's the proper thing to say?
The resolution passes.
Resolution passes. Excellent. Let's move on to gypsum board. Resolution approving construction bid for gypsum board assemblies at Parkland Plaza, 29 through 32.
And our recommendation is Great Lakes Sealing and Carpentry for $328,356. Yep, that's right.
That's on page 30, GLCC.
What are they called again? Great Lakes what?
Great Lakes Sealing and Carpentry.
And the amount being 328,356? Okay.
Correct.
I'll go ahead and read this. The board resolves, 1, to authorize O'Neill Construction to award gypsum board assemblies to Great Lakes Sealing and Carpentry?
Yes.
In the amount of $328,356. Number 2, that the expenditure be authorized from the capital fund. Number 3, that all resolutions and parts of resolutions that conflict with the provisions of this resolution are rescinded. Len, do you want to tell us more about?
Yeah, so we had 3 responses on this one, all very good companies. O'Neill's worked with all of them, highly recommended. We've worked with Great Lakes and Precision quite a few times on different projects. So any one of these vendors would have been someone we'd be comfortable to go with. The low bid on this, which was AACP, they actually didn't include some of the materials, and that shows on the tabulation form from them. They didn't include the hardy board. So technically, they're not low bid, even though they're the second on the rating. And Great Lakes is actually, I think Great Lakes did this room as well. They're out on Liberty Road, so they're local.
Just for those of us that don't know what this is, like, what is this actually?
It's your studded walls,
Okay.
your drywall, your finishings for what'll be the office space.
Gotcha.
The major piece, as Len mentioned, the hardy board, is for the wall between the office space and the warehouse volume. So that is like, it's not really exterior, but it's exterior grade because it will be on the, the outside of the vapor barrier in the conditioned space and such.
Other questions, discussion? All right. Oh.
Yes, I don't think we did.
Oh, shoot. All right. Can I get a motion on the resolution that I read? Sorry.
So moved.
All right, second?
Second.
All right, thank you so much. And now we will vote on the resolution. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the resolution passes. Moving on to approving construction bid for painting at Parkland Plaza, pages 33 through 35. And what are you recommending for this one?
We are recommending tie painting, $42,896.
Okay. All right. right, let me read this. The board resolves to authorize O'Neill Construction to award painting to Thai Painting in the amount of $42,896, that the expenditure be authorized from the capital fund, and that all resolutions and parts of resolutions that conflict with the provisions of this resolution are rescinded. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
And seconded.
Seconded.
Thank you. And do you want to tell us more about
Yep,
this?
so the two responses here, pretty straightforward, it's painting, but Thai Painting is kind of our go-to painter. If they do, we do a large project, they're typically our contractor, whether it's through O'Neill or not. They do a ton of work in our area. I think they're actually painting the big Jiffy addition right now. So it's just, when I saw they bid on it, I was happy to also see they were low bid.
We'll get close to, it seems, yeah.
Yes.
I'm sorry, what did you say, Jamie?
They're very close.
Oh, yeah.
Two bids.
They did all the branch meeting room projects, this room, the secret lab. Anything bigger than our maintenance department would do, Thai Painting typically does for us.
Other questions or?
Just looking around at all the edges.
All right, shall we vote? All in favor of this resolution, vote aye.
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 Aye. Resolution passes. Moving on to E, resolution approving construction bid for fire suppression at Parkland Plaza, pages 36 through 37. It looks like we only got one bid.
One response, yes.
Okay.
It's Tri-State Fire Protection for $315,000.
Okay, I'll read the resolution. The board resolves, one, to authorize O'Neill Construction to award fire suppression to, sorry, what'd you say?
I said state, it's Tri-Star Fire Protection.
TriStar Fire Protection in the amount of $315,000. Two, that the expenditure be authorized from the capital fund. Three, that all resolutions and parts of resolutions that conflict with the provisions of this resolution are rescinded. So, one,
So, I wish I had more information on why we only had one response. I believe it's the paper vault, so there's gonna be some dry chemical there. The good news is, this is the company we met with after we purchased the space and talked about the paper vault and what we would need to do. So they've kind of been in conversation with us the whole time. I think that's the biggest part of it. There's some rework of the existing fire suppression of where the office space will be. It runs lengthwise currently, so we'll have to move some of that. But I think the one response was really about our paper vault and the needs there. It's pretty specific.
It's a specialty product.
It is.
It's, there will be gas canisters where the fire suppression system for the paper vault is, so that if there's ever a trigger of the fire suppression system inside the paper vault, it's releasing gas and not water.
can I get a motion on this resolution before we proceed?
So moved.
In a second?
Second.
Excellent. And now discussion or questions?
Sounds like they're the one.
Yeah, I mean, that reasoning makes sense that there wouldn't be a ton of people doing that work, but we gotta protect our stuff, so.
Yeah, it is a unique job in that sense, where we had meetings with, what was it, one archivist and another firm?
Yeah, we had two different archivist specialists who specialize in developing these types of facilities to help us make sure that we were on the right track with the different products and the suppression system that we were specifying, and other things like, the way that you wrap the space, and that you want to make sure when you have a gas fire suppression system, that's really important to not have any penetrations through the walls that aren't sealed up, because if it goes off, it needs to be concentrated for it to work. You don't want it to be all flowing out through under the wall or things like that. So we had our construction manager was in those meetings, and so we have some really great advice from specialists in the field that helped us specify this kind of unusual specifications for a project.
All right, shall we vote on the resolution? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, resolution passes. And I think that does it for new business. sorry. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for all your work on that. Thanks, Len, that's quite the series.
But then that's it. I think those are the last 5.
Yeah, so what's left is, doors, frames and hardware, the glass and glazing, carpet and flooring, we'll call it, elevator, wheel lift, and then plumbing. That's all that's left.
It's exciting to see it come
And
together.
they're all just pending scope review, getting that score.
Yeah,
So we should have those for the next month's meeting.
thank you so much.
Thanks.
Do we have any citizens' comments?
Still haven't received it.
Okay,
Let me just check or never mind.
or you can look
No,
at.
we're all set.
Okay, we're all set. All right, then this meeting is adjourned. Thanks for keeping us on track, Karen.